Hey guys, I am back in Anchorage. My contract is coming to a close here. I got a few things to take care of. I should be home within a week. But I thought I would finally finish my Q&A video. I know I suck. I haven't a bunch of stuff happened in the last few weeks, and I just really haven't had time to get to it. Anyway, so no names left. 0102 wanted to know what my favorite way of dealing with creationist quote mines. That's a great question. If you've those of you who've seen my older videos, especially, I really thoroughly enjoy finding the original source of the quote and kind of exposing how it's either fabricated, taken out of context, etc., by showing the original source that it's from. I mean, I derive a great deal of pleasure from doing that. So, and I kind of do collect. I have sort of my own version of like Talk Origins has its quote mine project. I've kind of been keeping this sort of a similar thing for other quotes that I find because they, as you know, reuse the same information and then they just cut and paste from each other. So it's a worthy endeavor in my opinion. Afroboy10 wanted to know how long have I been teaching biology and are there any issues arising from teaching biology in the state of Alaska? I'm assuming you mean referring to evolutionary biology. I've been teaching since 2005. I got a teaching job when I was as a PhD student when my undergraduate advisor was killed in a boating accident, and I was hired to fill in her classes. And then I applied for the tenure track position and got that. So I taught college for 2.5 years, and then I was adjuncted at the University of Alaska for a few semesters, and then taught at a grade school, which is kind of interesting switch. But in terms of issues arising from it, when I was teaching college, I did have an issue where a student protested the teaching of evolution, or my teaching of evolution in a class, or at least not acknowledging the equal validity of young Earth creationism. Um, that was an ugly issue. I made a video about it. I didn't particularly care. It was an unpleasant occurrence. I didn't like having to defend my job. Um, but in terms of teaching at the grade school and stuff, there actually it's kind of cool. The state of Alaska has in its education standards evolution to some aspect of evolution or old Earth geology is covered in every grade. It has to be covered in every grade. It's one of the few states that has where requirement to teach evolution, which is kind of interesting given how right wing the state is otherwise. Um, kind of some wise people in the founding of our education standards, I guess. Evolutional asked about what is a ecologically conservative thing for a seafood lover who's concerned about the collapse of marine ecosystems. I butchered the question, but I think that's the gist of it. That's a great question too. What I do is I just try to research it. I'm also very concerned about that. I try to avoid things like tuna, for example, that are pretty bad off. At least some populations are. Um, and so I try to keep up on it. One hint though, there's the Greenpeace list. I for some reason the name is escaping me. I had it minutes ago, but it's gone now. I would the red list, I think, yeah, but I can't remember what the. Anyway, there's a whole lot of things on there that are complete bullshit. You look at it and where that list comes from or why they include certain. I mean, they include populations of things that are extremely healthy and well managed, and lumped in with other things that are actually like they have. An example I would see is they have shrimp. All world populations of shrimp are to be avoided on that list, ignoring the fact that the trawl shrimp fishery in some places like the Gulf of Mexico and off of the west coast of Mexico had been poorly managed, is poorly managed in some places, is destructive, and is a really bad fishery to support in some areas. But other fisheries like the northern the Pandalus borealis, the pandalid fisheries here in Alaska and on the North Atlantic are extremely well managed and very sustainable fisheries. So why would they be on the same list with it's I I don't put a lot of confidence in that. So again, just research. You know, pick your target species and find out what you can about the fishery, the management of the fishery, and how sustainable it is. Sustainability is the key word, I think. D. Jason Wright asks if I have a favorite anecdote about my life or career. I've got quite a few favorite anecdotes. One that just comes to mind since I was just talking about teaching. It's a very funny thing is my freshman year of college as an undergraduate. I was attending Sheldon Jackson College, and we got busted. A group of us got busted with a keg in the dorms, and that's pretty much an immediate not suspension. What do you call it? We were kicked out of. All of us were kicked out of college, and in fact, I was told I have a letter um, telling me that I will be, I'm no longer allowed on the campus. So I had to switch schools to another school. But the funny twist is that it was funny at the time. Is that a few years later I found out that the guy who had kicked me out had moved on to another college. So I reapplied, went back there my senior year, graduated with honors, and everybody was all, it was kind of a big ongoing joke, like, I can't believe you got kicked out of here and told never to return, and now you're graduating, with a 4.0 GPA. There was a humor to that, but then it got even funnier because that's the college that I returned to teach at. So I was actually a invertebrate zoology professor at the college that I was kicked out of and told never to return to. So to me, I would almost daily derive pleasure just walking into my office and thinking that, I don't know, if the students only knew. When the school finally closed and I lost my job, I did tell the dean about it. He was one of my friends. I told the dean about it, and we had a big laugh over that. But the funny thing is that I had heard as faculty, like at faculty parties and such, people talking about, did you know there were these students that had a kegger, and like it was about how bad students used to be back in the olden days, and I just have to sit there and listen to that and go, wow, and one of the faculty people, one of the professors said, wait a second, weren't you might have been there when this happened? Do you remember that? And I said, what year was it? Playing stupid, and they said they said like around the year, and I go, no, I think I was earlier than that. I heard about it, but I don't, just kind of playing dumb. Anyway, to me that's one of my most amusing anecdotes. Colin Mason, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, asked if I think he's good enough to subscribe to, and yes, you are. I did subscribe. I knew I had been subscribed to you before. Why I wasn't when I saw that question and I went and checked and I wasn't subscribed. I'm almost positive I used to be. I don't know. A few times I've noticed that people that I'm not no longer subscribed to, and it's nothing that I did. I don't know what happened. Colin also wanted to know what I think about the United States in terms of quality of research, and I think that's correct. One of the things that I think, and this is just a perception, don't put any weight on this. This is just sort of as I see it. I could be completely wrong. The facts may not support my perceptions as things often do. But I've seen since I've been in academia, one of the things that I've noticed is the at one point in time, the United States was sort of was one of the pinnacle of research. I mean, nations producing biologists. That's the one field I can really speak of. Meaning there was this graduate schools were people came from all over the world to U.S. graduate schools, and I think, and it's a positive thing. I'm not saying this is a negative. I've noticed that I'm seeing a lot more really great scientists coming out of what were developing nations, and I think it's I think the effect is that people, came got graduate degrees here, or in Europe, and then returned home, and then are now raising this next generation of research students, PhD students that are doing just amazing stuff. I'm specifically speaking like in crustacean biology. There's some of them like the decapod tree of life project is you look through the list of the main names in it, and they are students who, from Mexico or Venezuela and such, students that that went to graduate school there, graduated there, and are now publishing sort of earth-shattering new views of crustacean phylogenies. All right, Thunderbolt 94 asks 5 questions. The first, my favorite book, which I already answered, but I'll say it again. Frank Herbert's Dune, I believe, is probably my favorite book of all time. He wanted to know if I watch any TV shows. I watch a lot of TV shows. Some are listed on my channel page. I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, all of the series really, but I have a soft spot for the original series. In terms of current shows, Doctor Who, I love it. Really liking the 11th Doctor. He's right behind my favorite Doctor now, so which I think is a question coming up, so I'm not going to answer that one yet. Okay, here's the next question. My favorite movie. My favorite movies. I'd have to say it's kind of a toss-up. I love Casablanca, and I know that's kind of cliche thing, but I watch it at least once a year. I'm a huge fan of Casablanca. It's just the perfect movie in my opinion. I like Cannibal the Musical is one of my favorites. I just thoroughly enjoy it. I like Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Again, it's worth watching a million times. He asks, what do I do in my spare time? I'd have to say, if I had to pick something that's not work related, because I really do enjoy biological taxonomy, and so I do a lot of that in my spare time, but it kind of counts as work. But I had to pick a non-work related, I'd say probably disc golf. I love playing disc. I'm terrible at it. I've always been terrible at it. I mean, I've improved from when I first started, but I think I've plateaued at a point where I'm simply always going to be about as good as I am. But I love to do it. It's just a blast. And his final question, who is my favorite creationist opponent? Well, I have to say, and this is, I know this is pathetic, but I really enjoyed Mystical Forest. Even though it was easy, it was a no-brainer, it was shooting fish in a barrel kind of a thing. I just enjoy. I always looked forward to a new Mystical Forest video, and sadly enough, that's seems to be an era that's come to an end. But in terms of serious creationists, I have to say anybody on the Carl Ball show, especially Russ Miller, he's fun. And I'm going to get actually that's a question that's coming up next, so I'll complete that answer in the next question. The Living Dinosaur asks, what creationist do I find the most annoying and why? There we go. Russ Miller. The reason I find Russ Miller so bothersome is that, first of all, he's pretty mean in at least in our exchanges, like PM exchanges and email exchanges. He's pretty mean. He's not a very nice man, I don't think. And even when I started off politely to him, and he got very condescending, very insulting. I find him annoying. I find his voice annoying. I find the fact that he seems to be unteachable, or at least pretends to be unteachable, in the sense that if you completely correct him, you get the distinct impression that he's going to go on repeating that same claim because it works. He knows where his bread and butter come from. So that's Russ Miller. Lapkin77 asks if there is a multicellular viral organism. To the best of my knowledge, no, there's no such thing. I think to be multicellular, you have to have a cell, and viruses are pretty much naked DNA in a delivery system, or RNA in a delivery system. So I would think that would preclude any kind of multicellularity. I mean, I would suppose it would be a fun thought experiment for somebody specializing in microbiology to sort of envision how a collection of viral organisms might work. I think that'd be kind of interesting. If it would work at all, I really don't know. But I don't think there are any, and I don't think there really could be, just by the definition of cellularity in the first place. He wanted to also know, Lapkin asked, if a virus could change the morphology of an organism. I don't see why not. I mean, there certainly are viruses that produce like what is it, the one that infects, the tobacco mosaic virus that causes the cells to grow into these weird tessellated patterns, for example, that kind of stuff. So they can change that. I think if I'm not incorrect, there was one scientific experiment done where a experimental it was an accidental experiment where a guy was a journalist, I believe, was bitten by a spider that injected modified viral RNA into his body, and he actually grew like spinnerets on his wrists and such. I think I don't recall the actual authors of that study, but it's so it is possible. The boy from Norfolk asks what advice I would have for a biology graduate interested in living and working in Alaska. Well, study hard and stay in school. Seriously, there's actually huge opportunities for biologists here, especially biological taxonomists, but it probably almost across the board field. I mean, it's really, we're resource poor in human resources here in a lot of ways, especially things if you get into in anything to do with wildlife, ecosystem management, wildlife management, fisheries management, or fisheries biology, that kind of stuff. Those fields are wide open here. There's certainly lots of opportunity for that. I mean, one recommendation that I would see right off would be to look at graduate schools. We have the University of Alaska Fairbanks School of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences is really a top-notch graduate facility, and people from there, you kind of have an in because you're working with all of the agencies or academic organizations that you would be eventually working for. Would be working directly with them while in school. So I think that kind of gets your foot in the door.